Fellas, welcome back to Straight Fire. Man, we missed him this past year. He's doing so much now. He's just so busy. Jay Bilas, the Duke legend, the announcer who calls a lot of college and now doing NBA playoff games. Jay Bilas, how are you, man?
Don't blame it on me being busy. You haven't called, you haven't written, you haven't texted, no emails. Come on.
Yeah, he is moving on up in the world. College basketball guru. Obviously, we'll talk draft. He's here courtesy of the American Century Championship, some celebrity golf tournament I didn't get invited to, Jay. How's your golf game, by the way?
It's getting better.
Oh,
I've got a little bit of time to play. I played a few times in the last week. So really, you got to practice for this thing because
yeah.
this is a legit tournament. So you have to be on your game to play in it.
Yeah. Is this where you like sign up for like to run a 5K and you forget to run and then like 2 weeks before you're like, oh, I should train? Is that one of
Yeah,
those deals with your golf game?
yeah. Well, it can be depending on schedule, but I've put the time aside to actually practice to hopefully get ready so I don't make a fool out of myself.
Nice. Well, good luck, obviously, on that. We want to drill down on the NBA draft. This is a stacked draft. The combine, I'm kind of obsessed with it. I've been texting people there. I'm a little surprised that the Darryn Peterson discussion against Dybantsa has popped up already. I don't know. Were you at the Dybantsa Peterson game in Fog?
Yes. Yeah, I
Okay.
called that game. And Peterson in the first half was amazing. I mean, he had 19 and made like three steals, if I remember right. And then he had to tap out in the second half. I didn't really know, Jason, about how profound an issue the cramping was that he had to call 911. I think it was in September that
Mm.
this full body cramp, he had to be hospitalized. And look, I understood why Kansas was kind of close to the vest on it because there are, medical privacy issues that go along with that. But, Peterson's a soft-spoken young man and he doesn't say much. And he's got management with him. And so they kind of limited how much they were talking about it. And as you know better than I do, in the absence of perfect information, people are going to speculate.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not honestly, I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm not sure the speculation was particularly fair to Peterson because there were zero issues with him in high school about his competitiveness, how much he'd love to play, all that. So I don't think it was particularly fair, but I sat down with him at the combine for a sit down interview and he explained the whole thing and I have no reason to disbelieve it. So if you and I were talking in February, we would have said Peterson's the number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think primary reason that it seems to be Dybantsa now is just because of the uncertainty that came from his availability issues during the
Yeah.
year. Because when he played, he's the real deal.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think it's going to be a tough choice for Washington. They may have their minds made up, they may not. I don't know where they are on it, but to me, it's not a no brainer at all.
Yeah, I wonder if they play the hey, we really want Dybantsa card, hoping Utah will trade up to get the BYU kid, right? And maybe Utah gives up, I don't know, Ace Bailey, Walker, whatever it is to move up and get their guy. Or, like you said, Washington, it just deals with the tough decision. The problem historically, Jay, is when there's a lot of these could go either way decisions, historically, and again, it doesn't really mean anything. The guy who goes second, whether it's NFL draft or NBA draft, usually pans out better. I don't know what's going to be the case here. I'm with you though. I think it might be Peterson.
He's uber talented. Like he's the best shot maker in the draft, and I think he's the most fluid scorer. He averaged 20 a game, and he really didn't for the majority of the season. He wasn't playing an entire game. And look, his lack of availability, I think, affected not only his rhythm, but their rhythm as a team, which is going to affect him and everybody else.
Mhm.
So that was an unfortunate byproduct of his, I guess you'd call it an injury situation. His body wouldn't allow him to play, but when it did allow him to play, there wasn't much to complain about. And
It-
I like him a lot.
yeah.
I'd be interested to see how these NBA teams come out on their personality testing,
Yes.
and how all that shakes out. Because Dybantsa, as you know, is kind of built for the NBA.
Mhm.
Like he fits the size and the length profile. He's got a 7 foot wingspan. He's got a NBA caliber, sort of mid range fadeaway game right now. Like he can shoot over just about anybody. And he gets to the rim and plays above it. So there's nothing to complain about with either one of them. It's just I keep hearing eye of the beholder. You hear that all the time. Like
Right.
who you may like more, believe in more.
If you were advising Peterson, would you have had said during the season, "Hey, just come out and tell people it's creatine"? Why
Yes,
wait until now? Yeah.
I personally would have. I don't quarrel with the decision they made. That's their
Yeah.
decision to
Yeah.
make. But yeah, I think generally you're better off in talking more, so that people have an
Yeah.
understanding. But the other part of it, Jason, which I think is fair, is the idea that while it was going on, they weren't sure exactly why it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you explain something that you can't explain? But I was at Kansas, watched him practice. There were no issues that I could see as an outsider that would have caused any concern. But part of my disappointment in his not playing was selfish. I wanted to see him play,
Right. Yeah.
and it wasn't somehow like I don't remember exactly what game it was, but he had the flu, and up until game time, everybody thought he was going to play. And then I don't know whether the doctors told him whatever, but the decision was made that he wasn't going to play in that game.
Yeah.
And then the fallout was like, well, Michael Jordan played when he like, wait a minute, that can't be the
Goofy.
only
Yeah. Yeah.
standard here. Like,
Yeah.
I've had the flu before. I couldn't get out of bed.
Right.
So I don't hold people to that kind of standard.
Let's move. Obviously, you have a gigantic Duke bias, having played for. No, just kidding. Having played there, but I honestly thought there was a situation where Cam Boozer could fall in the draft, depending on how it shook out. But Memphis at 3 feels like everything you've seen in their history and wanting to kind of clean stuff up after the John Morant mess, if you will. It seems like Cam Boozer is going to be 3, but I think there's a good discussion to be had about the Caleb Wilson situation. Because if you watch them head to head and Caleb Wilson's measurements, and I know you love the word wingspan, I think you coined that. It's a legit question, I think, at 3.
I think it's a legit question at 2.
Oh,
How good I think Caleb Wilson is. That
wow.
that you could make an argument that he could wind up being the best player in this draft. Look, every draft we look back afterwards and say, okay, we would have changed it this way. There's never been a perfect draft, at least that I've seen. We always look back 5 years later, going, okay, we're going to redraft this one.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. It's not a perfect system for making decisions. But Wilson, he's a legit 6'10". He's long armed. He's ridiculously explosive. And I remember watching him practice earlier in the year, and there was a play where it looked like he was kind of stymied and he was going to have to, kind of try to throw up a shot. And he just jumped up and punched it over a defender. And you're like, what? He's got the ability to do those things. And what I would say about his game is it's not yet refined.
Right.
But he's got so much ability. A beautiful touch on his turnaround jumper. I think he's going to be more consistent shooting the ball from the perimeter. But he rebounds at a high level. He's a really good passer, and he just got an aptitude. And there's a pop to him that you don't see in players all that often. So he's intriguing. And that's one of the great things about this draft. Like you can get a traditional top 5 player further down in the draft this year.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you might have 10 guys in this draft that would be considered top 5 in other drafts. But and I don't know how this draft compares. Like if you take the top 5, there have certainly been other years where the top 5 might be as good or better. But 1 through 25, I don't remember a draft this deep of really good players.
Yeah. And you're right on Wilson. I saw this, the NBA people love stocks, steals and blocks. And he's like one of the best in this draft for a guy who didn't play that much, but you're right. His length. It's interesting. I didn't think so. In your scenario, he goes 2. Who of Peterson or Dybantsa would slide to 3?
Either one of them. I mean, that's
Ooh,
sort of the thing. Like
wow.
if we're arguing about number 1 before, if you think Caleb Wilson, like, and that's the one thing about this is you're like, wait a minute, he's the guy we want. So you might trade up to get. Who knows what you would do? But if you think as highly of him as I do, why not take him at 2? Like, what says we have to take somebody
It's fair.
that
Yeah.
we don't like as much? I could see that happening. Like I think it would be I don't think it's going to shake out the way we think. Like it
No,
seems this
definitely
thing's
not.
been slotted for a long time, and
Yeah.
usually that group think slotting
Hmm.
isn't correct. And it's not that it's nobody's fault. But you kind of say, okay, it's one, two, three, and I've heard somebody say recently the draft starts at five.
No.
Well, I don't know that that's true.
No.
But we'll see. But that's what makes it more fun this year, I think, than most years is there's a lot to argue about
Yeah.
legitimately, and that's going to make it even more fun.
And Zach Kleiman in Memphis, the GM, I think he's a Duke guy, right? Did he not graduate from Duke Law School or something like that? So that could tie into the Boozer aspect. Boozer's fascinating. You probably know him better than anybody who's analyzing the draft. Obviously, we know he's a winner, right? Let's get that out of the way. Um, the measurements are great, but people just worry about the lack of athleticism. And you know, we had Fran Fraschilla on, and he's like, hey, you know who else wasn't athletic coming out? Nikola Jokic. You know,
Oh,
he's not jumping over a phone book. What do we care? And you see Boozer's skill set. I mean, around the rim, passing, shooting. He crushed it at the shooting drill at the combine. I like Boozer a lot. I just can he be a franchise guy, your number one guy? Do you think he's got that capability?
yeah, I do. And look, I get the athleticism part because it's true. Like he's not a wow NBA athlete in a league full of freaks.
Yeah.
But to Fran's point, and he's right. Like Alperen Şengün is
Mm,
not a wow athlete, and he's an all-star. And I think that Boozer has that in his future because he can shoot it. Really good passer. He rebounds at a really high level. And he's unbelievably productive. And the Jason, the thing you let off with is probably the most important. Like he wins.
yeah.
And it's not the old Shaquille O'Neal thing when he said, I've won at every level except college and pro at one point.
That's
But he won
right.
in high school, won USA basketball, won at
Yeah,
Duke,
yeah.
and I think that's part of his DNA. He's just he gets it, and so I think he'll carry that level of productivity
Yeah.
to the NBA. It just won't be, he's not going to be putting people on posters,
Right.
but who cares? He wins.
Yeah. I want to skip the glut of guards after that top four. And I want to go to Lenderborg, the Michigan star. So there's an interesting stat. I'm sure you've seen it, Jay. You don't draft guys who are 23 years old in the lottery. You just don't do it. Historically, they've all kind of crapped out, petered out. They were older, dominating college basketball. They're finished products, whatever. I wonder if he's going to break the mold because he is like a late starter to basketball. Obviously, his story is well chronicled. I kind of love him. I don't see him slipping out of the lottery. I had him to the Warriors in my mock draft at 11. But there's a world where, somebody in the top seven is just like, I want this guy. He's a beast. Your thoughts on Lenderborg?
I take your point about the 23-year-old thing, but you wonder how far that goes back in analyzing that because when I was coming out of college, nobody left early back then, or at least
Yeah.
relative to now. And when Tim Duncan came out in '96, he was a rookie that had a lot to learn, and
Hmm.
he's 22 years old.
Yeah.
And so I'm not as bothered by that. In Lendeborg, you get a guy that you can plug in, and he can play right away. You don't have to wait very long on him. Now, does that mean that at age 23 that you can see his ceiling a little bit better than you can with some of these guys that are 18? Of course it does.
Right.
But the NBA in the draft now, there's certainly these super talented young guys, which is important. But you've also got the NBA needs guys that they can plug in right now,
Yeah.
and he's one of those guys. And he's skilled. He's really strong. And the stat, but last season there were two players, not his Michigan year, but when his last year at UAB, there were two players in the country that led their teams in scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks. It was Cooper Flagg at Duke and Yaxel
Hmm.
Lenderborg at UAB. And I don't care where you play, you do that. You got chops, and he did that. And then he goes to Michigan and leads them to a national championship, and they don't win that thing without him.
Oh, certainly. I mean, he could be, and I'm not comparing his skill set, but like a Jaime Jaquez, who a lot of teams passed on to take, like, let me grab Jet Howard or Grady Dick. Okay, well, Jaime Jaquez was like an integral player on Miami Heat teams going to the playoffs, and maybe he doesn't have, all NBA future, but you need those guys to help you out. And like, I don't know. It's just good. He's going to be an interesting one. Turns 24 in September.
Yeah, that's a good call on Jaime Jaquez, because that's a really good call. And Lenderborg's teammate Dybantsa, I expect he's staying in the draft, but 7'3" shot blocker, Morris Johnson Jr. He's going to be taken in the first round if he stays in the draft. Boy, Michigan had some dudes, man, but leading the party.
So there's this glut of point guards. I need to know. It's tough to ask you to rank them, so I'll just ask for your favorite. You got Acuff from Arkansas, Wagler, Illinois, Flemings, Houston. I'm going to toss Burries in there from Arizona because I like him, and Mikhail Brown from Louisville. That's a lot of guys. They all seem kind of bunched up. I don't know if wingspan separates it, production. But I'm just curious, of those five who are all kind of lead guards. I know Brad Stevens in Boston kind of ushered out the whole point guard thing. It's just like, you're a ball handler. But your thoughts on that quartet or quintet?
I would probably rank Keaton Wagler number one of that crew.
Ooh.
And it's amazing sort of his journey. He comes from Kansas and was a virtual unknown coming out of high school. And I'm not even sure he's ranked in the top 120. And then had that amazing year last year, helping lead Illinois to the Final Four. And he had a 46-point game and multiple games where he scored 30 plus. From my seat, he reminds me a lot of Tyrese Halliburton when he was at Iowa State. Similar in shooting. I think Wagler does a better job at this stage of his career of creating space even than Halliburton did. But remember, Halliburton had that low release point, but he made an ungodly percentage.
Yeah.
Wagler shoots a really good percentage. It's really hard to speed him up. And then after that, I would go to Kingston Flemings from Houston. Another guy that had a 40-point. I watched him get 42 against Texas Tech in January. That was the same day that Wagler scored the 46 and Dybantsa 43. Three freshmen scored over 40 on the same day. And Flemings has some size. The one knock on him as far as being the best guard prospect is he wasn't the most consistent three-point shooter, but he can make threes, and I think he's going to be a really good three-point shooter. But his mid-range game, his ability, he's got that burst to get to the rim, and he's a really good finisher around the rim. Acuff is an interesting prospect. Yeah. He's a ridiculously good scorer and playmaker. Led the SEC in scoring and assists. He's the first since Pistol Pete Maravich to do that. He is small, like he's 6'1", 6'2", maybe. And his defensive analytics were not good.
Not good.
But, like Cal didn't want him getting in foul trouble. There's nobody else to put in. He had to have him on the floor, and Acuff knew that. But I think he's a terrific prospect, and he's not going to be on the board past number 8, no matter what. And Mikhail Brown can really shoot it. I think his shooting is better than his numbers indicated. And another guy that got 40 as a freshman in a game had some lower back issues that put him out of play, especially at the end of the year, that really hurt Louisville. But uber talented. And then Burries is from San Bernardino, California, and can really shoot it. And he's another guy. I think his shooting is better than his numbers indicate. But way more athletic than I think people gave him credit for. But that's as good a core of guards as you're going to find in the top 10. The one that really interests me, though, he's not a guard, is Nate Ament from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because he's incredibly talented. And I think, sometimes people were questioning his toughness. Teams tried to be physical with him. And I thought he answered it really well. So, he could go in the top 10, but he could slide down and wind up, the 16th pick. But if he's going 15 or 16, that shows you how strong this draft is.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I think some people will be surprised to hear you have Acuff not number one of that group, but a 6'1" point guard. He's not Derrick Rose. He could have been Derrick Rose in college, but I don't think he's going to be doing Derrick Rose windmill dunks and all that nasty. Derrick Rose was incredible. I don't know that he's that athletic. Do you?
He's athletic. It's just it's more a power athleticism, which Rose had. but you're right. Rose was a freak among freaks. But like, I don't question anything on the offensive end with Acuff. Like he can
Yeah.
score and he's tough. Like he basically played the whole year injured. He had a foot issue,
Hmm.
and if you saw him off the court, he was probably wearing a boot, at least during the latter half of the season, and he wouldn't come out.
Yeah.
Calipari would say, "Hey, if you want to sit this game out, get some rest." They kind of encouraged him to do that. He said no, and man, he played. The only game I saw him play where I didn't think he played well was at Florida, and Florida beat the hell out of Arkansas that day. But
Yeah.
you saw him in the SEC tournament. I mean, he was a one man gang, and
Unbelievable.
they wound up winning the thing. But he's legit. It's just I think you have less concern in today's game about a 6'1" guard as you did 10 years ago or so. But I do question, kind of the defensive stuff a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think he's going to have to dispel that a little bit. But there's no question he's going to be able to score in the NBA.
Yeah. So we could wind down here with in recent years, the Euros have gone at the top of the draft. Besides Wembanyama, plenty of busts. Not that Alex Sarr and Risa Shea can't turn it around, but and there's really no connection to those guys. This draft people are excited about. It's like all college basketball players at the top. I'm just curious your thoughts on NIL and how it's impacting the draft.
Well, it's definitely impacting the second round. First, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was 71 early entry candidates, which was half of what it was 4 years ago. Um,
Wow.
and it it might have been more than that used to go in. Guys would pull out, obviously.
Hmm.
But because players can make money now, they're staying longer. So college basketball is better. And I would argue, I don't know if the NBA would agree with this, but I think it makes the NBA better because now they're getting guys that are more prepared when they get there. And it gives them more time to scout them when they're in college. That's one of the things that always kind of fascinated me about the drafts. And it's not that I've analyzed the NFL draft or all that, but the NFL by and large gets at least 3 years to look at a prospect. Basketball, the best prospects get a year in college, and you can only watch them a certain amount in high school that you're allowed to see. So most of it, if not all of it's on tape. And but there's a lot of guesswork that goes into that. What's the guy going to look like when he's age 23, 24, 25, all that stuff. You're trying to project it out. But I tend to think it's better now. I mean, it's certainly better for the players to be able to be compensated. But I think it's actually better for the NBA that they get more time to look at them. They're getting a more mature product when they ultimately decide to go in the draft. And for a player this year, you go to the combine and you get your evaluation and you can say, okay, you know what? The draft's not as good next year. So I can go back to school, further my education, make some real money, and then go when I'm ready. And I think that's a great benefit for the options of all these players.
And since you did some NBA games, I know tanking is a big issue or alleged issue. I personally think it's overblown. But I mean, Jay, we just saw Victor Wembanyama. Not that the Spurs tanked for him, but a lot of people did tank for him. Like Victor Wembanyama in year 3 is about to go to the Western Conference Finals, and he looks like a seminal player. I know there's no Wembanyama in this draft, but this idea that like teams were like, we should be bad. There's a lot of freaking good players. I got no problem with that. I don't know. I'm just curious. Do you think this is overblown or like it's a problem that, yeah, I mean, we're going to see it in the NFL. There's going to be 8 teams tanking for Arch Manning at the end of next season. You watch. It'll be the
Yeah.
Jets, all those teams, Arch Manning or whoever else. And like, I don't know. I hear this kid Stokes. We had Coutinho Mobley on this week. He said, I'm telling you, this guy Stokes is built like LeBron. I don't know what he's going to be, but there'll be teams that want to tank for him. Just your thoughts on tanking.
You know, teams tank because it works. And,
Yeah.
and so they're not stupid. Everybody involved in the NBA wants to win first and foremost. But if your path to winning in the future is to tank now, they're going to do that. And so I do like the rule. Now, will it work out 100%? Probably not. There may need some tweaks that have to happen. So you got to kind of see it in practice to make it a full evaluation of it. But I do believe that the incentives were in the wrong place. When you have incentives to lose, I don't think that's a good thing because it also skews the NBA season. You're going down the stretch and you've got teams that are trying to lose playing against teams that are trying to win. I know it's baked into Vegas's odds and all that. I'm not talking about that kind of thing. But there are two things in my view as a fan, first and foremost, that the NBA needed to consider. One was the tanking thing, the other was the load management part. And to me, the load man, I always kind of think of, and maybe this is not first and foremost for anyone but me, but if you buy your kids, tickets to a game for Christmas, so they get to go, see your local team, but you're really coming to see LeBron. LeBron, they decide to sit him, or take any great player, Wembanyama, and they decide to sit him. Like most of these teams are going to sit their guys on the road. My thing is if you're going to sit your guys, sit them at home.
Yeah.
Make your fans do it. But don't do that to fans in other locations. I just don't know how you do that, because otherwise they're just going to say they're hurt.
I mean, and, yeah, you know this, Jay. You're calling NBA playoff games. I want the Stars there in the playoffs. No, no disrespect. I don't care if they're there February 17th. I know you bought tickets and stuff, but I need them in these playoffs. No Luka Doncic was a killer. That series was, I mean, Lakers fought hard. It was unwatchable.
Yeah, I mean, and look, if him playing as much as he did contributed to that, I don't know if that's true.
No, that's fair.
But whatever it is, like I want to see him play as often as you can see him play. It's a selfish thing. But I get the old timers like me that said, hey, back in the day, everybody played 82 games. Now it's a story if somebody did it. So you have that part of it, but you do want to see these guys available, and I think it makes the product better. Like, look, I'm a baseball fan. I loved it when pitchers went all 9 innings and threw complete games. They don't do that anymore.
No way.
And they don't do it for a reason. It works the way they're doing it now. Like they study this stuff. Like they've analyzed every aspect of this to win, and they've got more money invested in these guys than they did in years past. 100%. So it's a bigger financial hit to an asset of yours if it's injured. Like look at the Lakers without Doncic. They needed him in there. So you're right. I mean, I hope they can wrap their arms around all this stuff, but even if they don't, like I tend to be in your camp that it's an issue, but let's not lose our lunch over this. It's not that big of a deal.
Totally agree. Jay Bilas, ESPN, great announcer. Jay, thanks a lot, man. Enjoy the golf next weekend. Good luck.
Thank you. Great to be with you. Don't let it be too long next time, and don't blame me.
All right. Okay. All right. See ya.